Hi guys, it's your boy Paul Moon. Today we're gonna be interviewing the hopeful teacher across the way from me, Mr. Pablo Luna. Like, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Absolute pleasure. Hey man, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I could be here. Glad you made the time for me. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Oh, with like that out of the way, right? In case people don't know you, which I don't know why they wouldn't, but like, give yourself like a proper introduction. Yeah, sure, I'll give an introduction. Hi, my name is Pablo Luna. I am a history and social studies secondary education major here at the University of Iowa. You know, really glad to be on the show today. Yeah, nothing much else to me right now. Right, so with introductions out the way, let's get the interview started, right? So, first question, right? As a teacher, the physical classroom is like one of the more important parts of the like of the overall classroom, right? Including like the students, the teacher. It's overall just extremely important. So how do you plan on using that physical space to your advantage as a teacher? Yeah, absolutely. I think that the physical classroom definitely has a lot of things to like offer. When it comes to how you arrange it, even like some like the lighting situation. Like for example, I had a teacher in high school. She was like my English teacher, my 11th grade English teacher, and she would have like things from like aroma diffusers to like a lamp, like not even like the fluorescent lights you would see like above, like even like above me right now,
Right,
but like you
right.
would see it like in a way where it just kind of provided like a really calming environment. And I think teachers like her kind of remind me of, just how impactful these, physical classrooms can be, right? Because you take these things that like, like everyone's seen like a row of desks, right? But from small things like making groups to like from like the physical classroom itself, there's so many things that like you can do to like help promote like calmer or like even like a safer or like even like establish some like themes and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with like the physical classroom that I think provide like a lot of great benefits for the classroom if like done correctly. Right. So, while it was nice to like hear about like how you plan to like use the classroom physically, right? Let's dive in a little bit more into that like specific about like your particular course because you're going to be like a history teacher, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so explain to me a little bit more about like more of like how you plan to use your core sub like use it and relate it to your core subject area. Oh yeah, I should probably dive into more along the lines of like my core subject, right? So while I'm a social studies education major, I probably want to lean a little bit more towards the history, simply because that is what I took primarily most here in college so far. And it's one of those things where I think as a history teacher, I think you have a unique perspective or like a unique like point of view rather of how you can decorate your classroom, right? I think for me personally, I'd probably go not like super dark, but I probably wouldn't have lights in a perfect world. I wouldn't have lights as bright as these, or like as harsh as
Right,
these, and
right.
have it like a little bit more like mellower, if that's the right word, if you will. The reason why is because I don't want to make it feel like you're in a classroom. I want to make it like feel a little bit more historic, right? And I think one of the other things I'll do is like physically decorate the classroom and stuff that like is both reminiscent of history and yet also connected to me in some way. Maybe one day down the road I'll have like student projects up and stuff too. But I, but for like me personally, I think that like decorations, lighting, all that stuff can definitely help convey. I don't know if I'd go so far as like the aroma diffusers, um, but I do love the parchment seal, so I can't exactly rule that off the table. But I think overall, like the overall classroom can definitely be a lot better. Even if you think about stuff like the desks, like I was mentioning earlier, when you put it like together in groups, when you put it together in groups, yes, you sometimes might have people like screwing around. But at the same time, when it comes time for like group work and stuff, especially if they're already really acquainted with their group and they spent like a period of time with their group, they're more likely to collaborate and, even as a result, produce a better product, um, and when they're together in a group, they can hold each other accountable. And sorry, I don't know if I smacked the mic, um, uh, but it's just one of those things that I think the physical classroom absolutely has like such a major impact on like the students and their learning. Right, right, spectacular, may I say. Transitioning, from like historical like physical use of the classroom, right, to more along the lines of the actual teaching of itself, right? Everyone talks about how historical and cultural relevant content is like extremely important and like even helps out the kids learn a bit more. How do you plan on incorporating that into your classroom? Right, right. So yeah, definitely great point regarding like the culturally responsive teaching, right? I think that when it comes down to it, I think creating like a culturally responsive and like relevant teaching is definitely one of the most important parts you can do with history, right? Because for a lot of people, sometimes like history can be extremely daunting. Not even that, but like I hate to say it, but like boring, right? While I don't personally find it boring, I know a lot of people who do, right? And it can be, right? If it's not like incorrectly, in my opinion, I think it could be extremely boring, right? But I think channels such as like Crash Course or even like different like history channels just kind of spread it around around social media with like like hundreds, if not thousands, of people. I think help picture um, that it can be done, right? Like if it's done correctly. And I think if we create like a relevant way to even like connect it to things like today, or even like stories that they might have heard in their lifetime that they can relate to, it can allow the students to like latch on to the content a lot better. And I think history has such a unique advantage with that because history is literally about the recollection of like people, events, things, and places, some of which don't even exist anymore. But I mean, for the most part, every part of land that we've come to know as, well, land is still relatively here, right? It's not like North America got put on the map all of a sudden. I know, and historically it kind of did, um, but like when you think about it, you know, North America is still relatively the same North America as even 150,000 years ago, or even taking it further back. Like it hasn't changed physically that much. Um, so I think that telling about these people and places and things that can relate to students can definitely help them like embrace history a little bit more. Um, well, I don't think that's like the sole thing that like will be the end all be all solution for it. I think it will definitely be able to help out a bit at the very least. Right. So I think one of the more important things as a teacher right now is, digital literacy, right? So when it comes to digital literacy, it's definitely an ever evolving thing, wouldn't you say? Right. So, how do you plan on keeping up with all this stuff, right? Because I can barely even keep up with some of the stuff like brain rot that is going on right now on like the TikTok, if you call that, if that's the right social media platform that I'm referring to. Yeah, I hey, look, if you're stuck on Facebook, I I respect it. I don't personally use Facebook anymore. I did when my parents really had a crackdown on me regarding social media. But yeah, I know I could definitely think things like digital. The digital landscape is definitely ever evolving, right? With new developments such as AI, and even throughout my time at college, just how much more advanced it became is mind blowing. And I think if you like go back 100 years and you talk to somebody about even half of the stuff we even have today, that they would go clinically insane. Um, and I think that it provides a unique opportunity, and yet it's also kind of a scary navigation that I don't need to, you know, try to figure out. There's still a lot of things that like we question what we should and shouldn't do online. We would have court cases, discuss like these types of things, right? So I think teaching about like digital literacy and trying to keep up with technology is definitely, you know, important, if not more important, every single day that passes, because this world is only going to get more technology advanced. So you might as well like learn how to effectively, ethically, and efficiently use this technology to, you know, help yourself and even potentially help the world out one day. Because these kids are once again like the future. Right, because like me personally, I like to stick to my Facebook nowadays. So hearing the ever like changing digital landscape, is something that's still relatively new to me, to this day, right? So, from there, I'm looking down at my question little sheet over here, and next question I'm going to ask you is related to sort of like that moral code, right? Because as a teacher, you're faced with a lot of decisions in the day, that could go any number of different directions. So, like, how would you think about, like, I think if I'm looking at my notes correctly, the MCEE, right? Is that correct? Okay. Yep. Glad that's correct. We're just from there, what are your opinions on that? Yeah, because I did ethics, and then like, what about the scenario about Feinstein, right? Right. So yeah, that kind of goes back to a little bit about like what I was saying about like the what's the words that I'm looking for? The like the digital literacy and stuff, and even like AI. When it comes to like those types of things, I think the MCE can definitely be a valuable tool, right? Um, because while it cannot help, unfortunately, make all the decisions for us that we may have in like a given school day, it can definitely provide us some guiding lines or stepping stones, if you will, because these are things that are created, by teachers. It's not like one of those things where like some out of touch professional just like tries to like come in and consults with air quotes. Um, this company. It's internal, right? And I think that's like one of the best things about teaching is the fact that we always try to lift each other up because we're always trying to look out for the kids. And I think that's like one of the most like impactful things that I think we could ever have, truth be told. So I think definitely it is something that like we can use to help like even navigate some of the things like ethical dilemmas. And I'm sure you probably will come up with one here, um but I mean, like I said, even from stuff like AI, I think it could definitely help out. Regarding like what we should and shouldn't do, and I have my own stances, but that'll probably be like a whole nother interview. I feel like so. Like right now, I'm gonna like present you with like a hypothetical, right? And that's gonna kind of be, I don't know if it's gonna be like featured in there, but like what if like a fight breaks out? Some kids want to do some rough and tumble. One, twos, left, their left, rights. Sometimes they be watching that like anime stuff and they want to recreate in real life. So how would you like to take that and does that apply? How would you handle that situation really? When it comes to like violent or like even escalated behavior in the classroom, I think that's a situation where I think while I can kind of talk about like some of the stuff that we go over in classes and stuff, I think it's going to be a completely different thing out there once you actually step in and this is a situation that's unfolding right in front of you. And I think that's a little bit scary to navigate, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's about maintaining respect for everyone involved. Even if it's like even if they're wrong or you're both wrong, it's about respect at the end of the day. And I think one of the things that you could do, is obviously just trying to make sure that like, you at least hear them out, because yeah, I think people always say that for like parents and stuff. Like you want to hear out the parents because sometimes they just want to get it out, right? But for me personally, like I know a lot of people go through different stuff, right? Could be from things from like home issues to life issues to even school issues, right? Um, and sometimes being able to get to the bottom of it can definitely be a helping factor. Now, if now physical fights are like if it's like a physical fight, then obviously don't punch the kid. I feel like that's kind of like point and simple. Um, but I mean, out like jokes aside and stuff, I think that it's one of those things that you should not put yourself in a dangerous position to begin with. definitely get somebody who is willing to kind of like throw themselves in there, not like just like as a sacrifice, but just more along the lines of this is what they're paid to do. Because I'm paid to do the teaching, and I am paid to like mitigate and help out and like try to you know de-escalate situations. However, if it's a physical fight, that's kind of where my that's kind of where my personal line. I think the professional line is also drawn, so I think we can meet eye to eye on that. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely a thing of hearing out, being there to support if they ever need anything, and being openly communicative about that to all parties involved, whether that be parents, students, and even other faculty. Um, just to simply offer a shoulder. Although it might not like be like the solution of the power of friendship type of thing. I think that a little goes a long way, and you never know how a situation will develop until like it develops. But if it becomes the physical, that's where that's where you got to draw the line. Um, and call for help. Call for help if you need it. That's the one thing I will say. Right, refreshing that like you wouldn't throw yourself in the scuffle. Last thing you want is to take a straight right hook to the face, to the dome, and you just like end up all over the place and ended up on that like TikTok thing that like these kids use nowadays. That's once again just like well beyond me, right? Um, so I appreciate your time here once again, and like one of the last questions I want to ask you is it's like different people require like different needs, right? And there's some people who are probably going to need a little bit more attention, if you will. How do you plan on managing that situation? Yeah, I know, and that's honestly a very valid question, right? And um, because me and you are both in our unique positions, and we were able to make it through general education, um, without too many um, learning difficulties. However, yeah, that's not the case for everyone, and it's completely unreasonable to assume that would be the case for everyone. So you have to be prepared for when those additional needs need to be met. Regarding like ELL, I think it's one of those things where um, you just gotta have like more patience with it, because I obviously you want to set the expectations as high as you can, just because you want them to like physically like do their best. However, sometimes like it's just difficult, and you got to be willing to like work through those difficulties, to to help provide like the best experience possible for the student, right? Um, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to teach them, but at the same time, you're not trying to make them feel isolated compared to everyone. And I think that that's like the best approach in my opinion about that. Um, there's other tools and stuff. One of the things that I mentioned in my portfolio for my education class, education technology class, is like the potential idea of trying to get translation documents, like translated documents and stuff, to try to make it easier. So while you try to like enforce those like learner skills, you could still have the option of potentially helping them in a language that they're more comfortable with. That way, they can still gain the same value. That way, they're not feeling like they have to compromise their learning just for the sake of learning the language, if that makes like any sense. Um, and I think for like um, for kids who have additional, um, you know, special needs, if you will, or like need special services. Um, I think that's a case by case basis. Truth be told, as much as I want to sit there and give like a blanket statement regarding it, every case is going to be different. That's the reality of it. Even from thinking about my time in practicum, I knew two students who had autism, and both of them, despite on paper having the same thing, like same diagnosis, two completely different things. And I think one of the things that you have to do is be communicative to everybody. And I know I talk about communication a lot throughout this interview, but like communication is like one of the most important things you can do, um, because you don't really know what's going on with the student every single day. Um, and that's why resources such as like para educators are extremely important because they can help you gain insight to like, okay, this is what's been happening today, or okay, they've been struggling with this, but they actually like really like this, and I think that overall, I think that um, there is a lot of things that like we could do, that can end up just being really helpful if we just be openly communicative, flexible, and willing to adapt. You got to think on your toes, if you will. All right, man. I want to say thank you so much for your time here today, man. It's been a pleasure meeting you and chatting Yeah, with you no, no. about Thank teachers, you man. I once think you're again gonna for be having me, an man. I absolute really star one appreciate it. day. I really Absolute appreciate it, star. man. Absolute star. You know, I just want to say, if you ever win an award for teaching, man, make sure you include my name. No, All right, hey, because I look, really appreciate the literally, shout, man. This look, radio, this radio show, this pleasure's all mine. podcast, Yep. kind of been going down the hill. But like, once again, really All right, appreciate you,
well,
mate. Really
I'm gonna
appreciate
head
you.
out, but
I'm gonna catch you later. Okay, I'll see you. All right, guys, that'll do it here for Moonwalks and Moon Talks with Paul Moon. Uh, make sure if you like it, hit that subscribe button. And I want to say thank you so much once again for watching the video. Right, I appreciate you, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye.